Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel. In this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. And today we have a lot of very interesting details. First of all, we're going to start with Aryakov area with Zaporozhye direction with the battle for Robotyne. We haven't received almost nothing from this area when talking about geolocations and video geolocations. The only thing we got is that either the Russians and Ukrainian sources confirmed that the Ukrainians during the previous evening and this night launched a very powerful attack on the western part of Robotyne. The Russians are saying that Ukrainians were using up to 2 companies of soldiers and that they were very aggressive, and furthermore the Russians reported that they managed to hear the conversations between the soldiers, and they heard the Polish language in those conversations. Yet we haven't received any details regarding the results of those attacks, but as we discussed during the previous days, currently the Ukrainians are trying to develop their positions in direction of the cities like Nestyryanka and direction of the city like Kopony, and to try to develop their offensive operation and their foothold between the cities like Kopony, Rivne, Ilchenkovo and Novoprokopovka. So this attack completely fits to these things that we discussed in the previous videos. When talking about the Russians, they just published another video how they managed to discover the Ukrainian positions in the vicinity of Aryakov, and as a result of Lancet strike they managed to destroy a Ukrainian artillery system that Ukrainians were trying to hide among the brushes and the tree lines. Now we are moving to another important area, to the South Donetsk direction. Today we got a lot of very interesting details that completely changed the map. Not completely, but they changed the map, at least in this area. First, I would like to discuss with you the situation in the vicinity of Ugledar. The Ukrainians, according to information we have, tried to concentrate their forces on the north of Volodymyrovka and Nikolskoye. The Russians controlled the situation in this area, and during the previous night and during the previous days they managed to attack and strike the Ukrainian forces using TAS flamethrower systems, different types of weapon, with the purpose to reduce the Ukrainian presence in this area and to force them to step back. And this is not the first attack in this area. There were not a lot of attacks, obviously, but since the beginning of September we see a small concentration of Ukrainian forces in this area, and that they managed, as a result of Ukrainian offensives, to get very close to the city by the name of Nikolskoye. This is that's like the edge position, edge geolocation of Ukrainian forces on this direction. Now we are moving to Marinka, and we got a lot of interesting details from Marinka and Krasnogorovka, from these two areas. First, I would like to discuss with you another FPV drone that the Russians made FPV drone strike that the Russians made in Marinka. We are using this video just to geolocate the combat line and to understand where exactly the combat line lays. On this video we see how the Russians launched another FPV drone, and as a result of FPV drone strike the Russians destroyed or damaged some fortifications, so the trenches that were located in this area. More interesting and probably important video is coming from the north, from this direction, from the northern part, from the northern edge of Marinka. On this video we can see another Russian attempt to attack the Ukrainian trenches, and the Russians were using for these purposes armored fists. There was a tank with a few personal carriers that were heading somewhere between the fields in direction of Ukrainian tree lines, and as a result of that attack the Russian tank got on minefields. There were a lot of mine explosions, but the tank wasn't damaged, or at least the tank was able to continue its movement. We see how the Russians were landing its infantry, then the armored vehicles left the battlefield, and probably as a result of those clashes the Russians managed to establish control over this tree line. So of course nothing special, but if we increase the number of updates for 2 days, we see that yesterday the Russians published the video from the same area of a series of FPV drone strikes against the Ukrainian trenches. So as I understand, based on these 2 videos, that the Russians are very concentrated on this direction. I assume that as a result of clashes that took place during the previous 2 days, the Russians currently are trying to establish control, or have already established control, over this sector. This is very important development, because if the Russians are able to establish control over this territory, of course it will increase their defense positions. It will give them possibility to concentrate and stretch their forces along these 3 lines, which will allow them to concentrate concentrate forces and to continue like offensive operation further in direction of Krasnogorovka to the north, and what is more important, to attack to the west in direction of Marinka, in direction of Georgievka. So inside of these fields, which will like allow them to establish a very strategical like tactical foothold for further developments in this direction. I believe that was very important update. Now we are moving further to another important area, to Bakhmut Artyomov's direction. First, I would like to discuss with you another missile strike, not missile strike, according to the sources we have. The Russians managed to discover the Ukrainian command center of the tactical group Solidar. This command center was located in the city Alexandra Kalinova. First, the Russians made some kind of reconnaissance operation. The Russians were flying above the territory of this area. After the Russians managed to discover the Ukrainian positions in this area, the Russians launched a very powerful strike with FAP 1500. Currently, we see the results of that strike: a small explosion, small smoke. From one side, we could say that nothing special, but later the Ukrainian sources published the video from this area, and as you can see, as a result of that strike, almost the entire territory was reduced to ruins. Significant number of damage, significant number of losses, according to information we have. As a result of that strike, the Ukrainians lost up to 50 soldiers and officers of tactical group Solidar. So that was the results of that strike. And as I understand, this entire operation cut the entire control of the tactical group Solidar, and for some period of time these Ukrainian forces left without commanders. And I believe that, of course, probably the Ukrainians have already fixed that issue, but anyway, that was a very powerful attack that brought significant results for the Russian forces. One more time, as a result of that attack, as a result of FAP 1500, the Ukrainians lost almost the entire command center of tactical group Solidar. Furthermore, during the previous days, the Ukrainians made an attempt to attack the Russian positions in the vicinity of Orekho-Vasilievka. If you remember, a few weeks ago, probably a week ago, we got update that the Russians managed to enter the city. There was just one video on how the Russian soldier was passing by nearby the small building in the edge of the city, and of course it's very difficult to make conclusions that the entire city was taken just based on this video. But the previous night we got another video from this area, and on this video we can see how the Ukrainian forces exactly in this area, this video was geolocated, how the Ukrainian Marines and troopers were trying to storm Russian positions exactly in this area. On this video we can see one Russian tank, one Ukrainian tank who was heading at the head of a convoy, and two personal carriers behind. At some second of that attack, one personal carrier was destroyed. Very difficult to understand what exactly what type of weapon the Russians were using to destroy personal carrier. Maybe that was a mine. Anyway, one personal carrier was destroyed, but the tank in front of convoy continued attack. And on this episode, on this second, we can see the direction of tank fire. So we see that tanks, as you can see on the right, attacks, let's say, to the right side of the tank. And another personal carrier that wasn't destroyed started stepping back, because people understand that there were no chances to continue offensive operation just with one personal carrier. But at some second of stepping back and withdraw their position, the second personal carrier also was destroyed. So basically the tank was left alone in this battle, and the Ukrainians lost two personal carriers with significant number of Marines inside. As soon as tank driver realized the situation, the Ukrainians started running away, because there are no chances, no even sense to continue offensive operation just with one tank against the Ukrainian Russian positions. So this is the situation. If we will try to add these updates on map, the thing was like this. Probably the Russians established control over this tree line, over this fortification, because the tank was heading exactly in this area, in this direction, and the tank was attacking the Russian positions. The Ukrainian tanks were, armored fist was moving along this line. So they were moving, and somewhere in this area, the Ukrainian tank managed to get exactly to this position, and from this position the Ukrainians were attacking the Russian forces somewhere inside of these trenches, inside of this stronghold. Exactly in this area, another Ukrainian personal carrier first was destroyed. The second one was destroyed somewhere here. And when the Ukrainian tank driver realized that currently he's alone, the Ukrainians withdrew their positions and returned back in direction of Aryakov-Vasilievka. So based on this video, we can say that the Russians, as a result of attacks, haven't managed to establish control over entire Aryakov-Vasilievka. Probably the Russians do have control over the southern part, and as I understand, according to that geolocated video, the Russians, as a result of clashes during the previous days, managed to establish control over these trenches, over this fortification area. And something like this. So as we can see, there is no talks and updates regarding the entire village, but at least the Russians managed to capture some hills, some fortifications, and currently Aryakov-Vasilievka is half encircled or something like this. So that was the situation that took place in Aryakov-Vasilievka. Also, the Ukrainians made few attempts to attack the Russian railways in the vicinity of Klishchiivka, but another situation without any support and protection from armored vehicles. The Ukrainians sent a significant number of infantry that was basically destroyed as a result of artillery fire. So significant number of losses on the hill without any progress in taking and crossing the railways on the northern part of Klishchiivka. The Ukrainians continue attacking the Russian positions, the Russian personal carriers, armored vehicles, supply machines, supply trucks that the Russians use to support their forces who try to defend the railways. But as we can see, this is not enough to complete the battle for railways successfully. On this video, we can see how the Ukrainians discovered Russian Grad system, and as a result of FPV drone strike, that Grad system was destroyed. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.